Hello and welcome to Unbroken from the Ashes. I'm James Ash, and today we're doing something different. We're doing an Ask Me Anything episode. I put out a social media post a week ago or so asking for your questions, things you wanted me to dive into, or things you were curious about me. And I got a lot of really good feedback. And so we're going to go over some of those questions today. And as we go through this, I'm sure you guys are going to have other questions that come up. Go ahead and drop those in the comments below, because if this is something you guys like, I will plan on doing this maybe like once a month or so. If this is something that you guys like, go ahead and let me know. Do the subscribe thing. So we're just going to jump right into it. What instrument do I play? I play three instruments. I play the clarinet, the saxophone, and the bass guitar. I am not really great at any of those anymore, but the saxophone was kind of my main jam. When I was a little kid, like in the 80s, the saxophone was in everything. It was in the song Tequila. It was in all of the 80s music, in all of the 80s rock, and I just love the sound of it. So from the time I was a little kid, I always wanted to play the saxophone. And so when I was about 8 or 9, my mom went to the local thrift shop, got a saxophone from the thrift shop. She spent like $90 in the saxophone. And this was at a time when we didn't have a ton of food. We didn't always have heat in our house. We didn't have hot water. So for her to be able to save up and get that instrument for me meant that she sacrificed more than I can count to try to get that instrument for me. And so following that Christmas, I went to the church, and there was a guy who played saxophone in the church, and I asked him for a lesson and to show me how to play it. And it turns out it was his saxophone before he sent it to the thrift shop. He sold it to the thrift shop. So he gave me like 2 lessons on the saxophone, on like how to hold it and how to put my mouth on it and all of that. And from there on, I just used the books that it came with and kind of taught myself how to play. So I played from about 9 years old all the way through high school. But when I was in 6th grade, that's when I could officially join the band. And everyone wanted to play the saxophone. So they made you go through a learning phase. So I had to learn how to play the clarinet first. That was like the vetting phase. So I started clarinet in 6th grade, and I played that through high school as well. I was never a phenom at the clarinet or the saxophone. I was pretty good, but I wasn't amazing. I have a friend, her name is Nazla Yetgen. She was amazing at both of those. She was a phenom. I always aspired to be as good as she was. In high school, I picked up the bass guitar. I played that for a little bit, but I really just made a lot of noise with it. I wasn't that great. What has been your best adventure? So many really, really good adventures. I think about my first adventure ever, going up Mount Rainier and getting to the summit when there was this massive storm, and it was like 50 or 60 degrees below zero, a total whiteout. And we were like the one guide team that actually made it to the top. By guide team, I mean like there was the guide and then like 3 hikers. We were the only ones that were able to make it because of the storm. And it was a brutally hard hike. That was an amazing experience. Leading up to that, though, we had months and months of training. And it was during those training hikes that I really got to know Jess, because she went on this hike with us. She did the summit attempt with us. And so we would spend days on the trail getting to know each other. And she became my best friend. So that was one of my best adventures. Then I think about my first time ever seeing the Grand Canyon. I get to the Grand Canyon and I'm like in tears. I've never seen this thing before, and it's just amazing. It was breathtaking. And we do a long hike. We start at the South Rim and we hike down past Phantom Ranch, and we go all the way to Cottonwood Campground in our first day. It's like a 15-mile hike. And that's where I proposed to Jess. And she said yes. That's where I got the girl. Over the next 2 days, we hike back out of the canyon, and then we go over to Havasu Falls. just an amazing area. Over these, I would say 5 or 6 days, we hiked something like 60 miles. It was epic. It was beautiful. It was awesome. Then I did my first rim to rim hike this last year with a bunch of buddies and with Tyler. And that was an amazing experience. The scenery was wonderful, but what was awesome was having this experience with Tyler and the bonding and the connecting with him and the handful of buddies I went and did the canyon with. It was absolutely amazing. So there are a lot of really good adventures. I think one of the most beautiful places I've been, other than the Grand Canyon, is Yosemite National Park. Jess and I did a 4-day backcountry hike through Yosemite. That was epic, absolutely amazing. And then this year in July, for Jess's birthday, she wanted to do something really scary. So we're going to try to do a Grand Teton Summit attempt, provided that my health holds up and the weather's good and all of that stuff. So we have more adventures coming. I'll share them on this channel with you guys. But I don't know. Those adventures, they're all kind of tied. What was it when I got to know Jess and she became my best friend, or when we got engaged, or when I had this epic hike with Tyler? I don't know. I can't pick, but they're all amazing. All right, here's one from one of my buddies. It says, hello, sir. I'd love to hear if you have any leadership advice for newly commissioned officers. For example, I did a direct to commissioning and have no prior service. So I would love to hear your perspective on some do's and don'ts. This is an amazing question, and the fact that you're asking it already says so much. The fact that you're asking it now tells me you're probably not going to have some of these problems. So for those of you that are not aware, the military is essentially broken up into 2 segments, and this is all of the branches. There are the officers, and then there are the enlisted. The officers have essentially administrative authority over all of the enlisted. And all that's required for you to qualify to become an officer is that you have to have a 4-year college degree. And then you have to go through the basic officer training for whatever branch of service you're signing up for. So for the Marine Corps, that would be like OCS, which is Officer Candidate School, and TBS, the basic school. And once you get through those, you are now an officer. So what typically happens is an officer will go through their basic schooling and their job training, and they'll come out of their schooling as a second lieutenant or a first lieutenant, and then they will be assigned to a company. And a company of, we'll say, military police. And so they'll either be like the executive officer or the commanding officer of the company, and they are in charge of a huge group of personnel. With that authority, they often perceive that they deserve a high degree of respect. And one of the things that we will say in the military is, I'll respect the rank, but not the person. And I've heard that, and I've said that. So here is where the rub lies. Respect is earned. Authority is granted. So you may come out of all of your training with authority over a large group of people, but if you want to lead them, if you want to be their leader, and if you want to have any influence on them, you need to earn their respect. And I think you know this, but this is just advice to anybody going through this process. Respect is always earned, and it's earned through selflessness. It's earned through you getting out there with your men and getting dirty with them. If they got to fill sandbags, if you get out there and fill some sandbags with them, it goes a long way. Now, I have a little bit of experience with this because my first 4 years of being in the Marine Corps, I was a garrison K-9 military policeman. And so I had a military working dog. I did like narcotic interdiction. I worked with like the SWAT teams, and we did like manhunts and worked with investigations and that kind of stuff. I did not deploy, even though I volunteered to deploy on a number of occasions because I had a drug dog. They said, no, we need your dog here in the States. We need bomb dogs overseas. So I never deployed my first 4 years. I got out in 2005, and I got recalled back into the service for the surge, Operation Iraqi Freedom. I went to Fallujah. When I got out of the Marine Corps my first time, I left as a corporal in E4. but I had like 30 days of, we'll call vacation time built up, terminal leave. And in that 30-day block of time, I got a letter from the Marine Corps, and it was my promotion to sergeant. I was an E5, and I had just gotten out before they could actually pin me on at my station. So 2006 rolls around, and I get recalled for service. And I join up with my guys. I meet them in March of 07 at Camp Lejeune, and I am a sergeant. I am a squad leader. I'm in charge of 12 or 13 guys, and I've never deployed. But a bunch of my guys had. So I had to lean on them for advice and for guidance and to learn my job better. I was in charge of them. I had authority over them, but I didn't have the respect yet, and I didn't really know my job that well, and I had to lean on them and some of my superiors who had all deployed before so that I could really be the leader I needed to be. And big shout out to my corporals that were with me and my staff sergeant. Really, really helped me a lot and did more for my leadership development than I could ever do on my own. Now, my advice to you on this is, as a new officer going in as the executive officer or commanding officer of a company or wherever you land, you're going to have enlisted men around you. The enlisted guys are kind of the workers. They're the grunts. They're the ones that are in the trenches doing the work. Lean on them to help you make good decisions. Now, you will ultimately have the final word. You have the final authority, but by leaning on them, you're going to make better choices and you're going to build their respect. Now, this is a slippery slope that I had a hard time with as I was going through my learning process. There came a point in time during my deployment when I went to my staff sergeant, the guy who was in charge of me. We'll call him Skinny. It was his nickname. And I said, Skinny, I didn't call him Skinny. I said, hey, staff sergeant, I feel like maybe some of my guys are losing some respect for me. And I feel like I'm trying to make the right decisions and I'm having them help me out, but I feel like they're losing some respect for me as well. And he's like, well, I think they are. You're leaning on them too much, and it's making you look incompetent. It's making you look like you really don't know what you're doing. He's like, you've learned a lot. Now you have to trust yourself and you have to make good decisions. And you do have the final word. You're the sergeant, you're in charge. Lean on them, but not too much. And that's the hard part. That's the part that's kind of tricky, is figuring out where that line is for you. So those would be my upfront do's and don'ts, is lean on your guys, get in the dirt with them, understand that you have the final authority and you got to earn their respect. All right, for my buddy Bison, what workout routines do you follow and what does your diet typically look like? This is a moving target for me. I'll start with the diet because it's easier. So like 90% of the time I try to eat really well, and 10% of the time it's garbage. Like yesterday I went to Brewster's after we went to the movies and I had a 2-scoop of ice cream on a waffle cone and it was amazing. But 90% of the time my rule is, if it was alive, you can eat it. So vegetables, fruits, anything that had a face, good meats and things like that. That's what I try to stick to. I try to minimize things that come in packages. I try to minimize things that are processed. That's hard to do, but typically 90% of the time I try to eat whole foods. If it's something that you can look at and be, hey, this is an apple, or this is cow, or this is a mango, that's food. Things that come in a package with 30 chemical names, that's not food. That's a product. There were times when I did strict ketogenic diets. I've had to do strict neutropenic diets or antifungal, antimicrobial diets based upon where my immune system's at and based on my cancer treatments and where that's got me. So it's a moving target, but typically I try to just eat real whole foods, things that are common sense. It's not rocket surgery. Now the workout routines, I'll give you the overall general kind of guideline that I try to follow, and then I'll tell you specifically what workouts I follow, and I'll put some links in the description below. So general guidelines, I try to do resistance training 2 or 3 times a week. And those training sessions are typically full body training sessions. And I try to do stamina training 2 or 3 days a week. Sometimes those are on the same day. Sometimes they're on different days. Depends on what is happening with my chemo. Like I get chemo tomorrow. And so I'm going to be just a pile of hot garbage on Tuesday, and I'm not doing anything on Tuesday. Maybe not on Wednesday. I don't know. So I try to do what I can when I can. And this is how everyone's life is. Emergencies come up, meetings come up, people call you and rearrange your schedule. Just do what you can when you can. When you do strength training, if you have limited days, if you know that you can only do it 2 or 3 days a week, try to do full body strength training days, because that way you're not missing on whole parts of your body development. And what I do, I don't do for aesthetics. I do for performance and function, because I need that, whether it's for my job, for helping somebody at work, or just going hiking and camping with my family. I want to be able to physically perform on demand. So all of my training is based around performance. It has some nice aesthetic side effects, but I don't chase the aesthetic. I chase, what can I do? Am I an asset or am I a liability? Now, specifically what I do, my favorite program is from a company called Mind Pump Media. And my favorite program is called MAPS Performance. And it has like 4 phases of training, like a strength building, a multiplanar movement and dynamic strength, and has a stamina phase. And I'll go through each of these 4 phases, and I'll just cycle it through and repeat it. I also do a lot of my own programming. I kind of know what I need, and I have a background as a personal trainer. I did that for a while. So I kind of know how to program. So I do my own programming as well. But when I follow a program, it's usually MAPS Performance. I started this kind of stuff when I was in high school. I was on the wrestling team. And so that's where my fitness journey started, was for wrestling, and then into the Marine Corps, and then into life as a first responder. So it's always been about application. It's never been about what does it look like. Not for me. What advice do you have on combating depression and anxiety, and how do you not let the hard days win? I don't have a ton of experience with anxiety. I do get anxious at times, but it's never like debilitating or bad. When I get anxious, for me, what I tend to do is I try to take a step back and ask myself, of the things that I'm anxious about, what are the things that I can control? And what are the things that I can't control? And of the things that I can control, am I doing enough or am I doing too much? Am I over fixating on certain things? Am I being like orthorexic of like trying to control every little thing? Or do I have a healthy balance? So I try to take a step back, and Jess is really good at helping me with this. I have a great partner where I can bounce things off of her. And she's very good at helping me assess whether I'm acting or trying to make a decision out of fear or anxiety, or if it's an appropriate thing. And I do the same with her. We help each other out on this. Now, depression's a different story. This is something that I've battled intermittently throughout my life. What I get now, I call it a funk. And I feel like it feels like a dark cloud starting to roll in. I can kind of feel it happening as it's developing and brewing. It feels like there's a storm in the distance, and I can just feel the clouds coming in over me. And then for like 3 or 4 days, I'll just be in this funk. I'll just be apathetic. It holds me down, and I feel like garbage. And then, after a short period of time, it seems to just dissipate just like it came in. It just kind of like slowly lifts and goes away. What I do during those times are the things that I don't really want to do. Like what I want to do is just isolate, be by myself, not really move. And so what I do is I force myself to do the opposite. I try to get around people, and I tell Jess, like, hey, I feel like I got a funk coming on. And she's like, all right, so we're going to go for a hike this weekend. Or, all right, so You need to go to the gym. You need to move. Get outside and get some sunshine, go for a walk. And those are the things that I do in those funks. And when I'm getting these bouts that I struggle with, oftentimes our physical actions or physical movements have very, very deep emotional and mental consequences to them or side effects to them. So if you're feeling down or feeling sad, just sitting up tall and smiling will actually make that kind of go away. If you've ever read Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, that's in there when he talks about the lobsters. That's kind of the correlation of this. Getting out in the sunshine, touching grass, putting some miles under your feet, doing the things that you would normally enjoy doing. If you would normally like to go out fishing, get out and go fishing, even if you don't want to. If you would normally go out and grab a buddy and get around a campfire, but what you really want to do is crawl under the blankets and isolate, call someone, grab a buddy, and bring them out to the campfire. Now, there have been times for me when it's been much worse than that. I went through a period of a very deep and debilitating depression, and it had its claws in me deep, and it really got in my head. The dangerous part is it's poison. It's an absolute lie. But Jess was on a trip and she was away. She was gone for a few weeks, and I was just kind of by myself, and I allowed these thoughts to brew and to fester, and they really had their hooks in. And so she got back, and I pulled her aside and I told her what I was going through. In sharing it, it seems as though I took the power away from that depression, that those hooks that were in me, those claws that were in me of this darkness, it loosened up. And I felt like now that I verbalized it and I told somebody what I was going through, then I had the strength to continue fighting. And I started going to counseling and therapy and all of the things associated with like trying to go through some deep healing. And so tips on combating depression depends on the degree. Sometimes you need professional help. Sometimes you may need medication if there's imbalances, if there's actual things going on in the brain chemistry. Sometimes it's just getting outside and going for a walk, but doing something proactive, whether it's getting outside, going for a walk, or grabbing somebody that you love and trust that you know will give you good counsel and that you feel safe opening your heart up to. I think you got to do something, because if you do nothing, that cloud just gets heavier and those claws just get deeper into you. And before you know it, man, it's a hard hole to dig out of. So that's my advice on managing depression and not letting those hard days win. What gives you strength and hope when battling cancer? It's an amazing question, and I think it's a couple different things. It started off just as me trying to be a good example for my family and for my boys, knowing that time's limited, trying to be that example for them and be as present as I can. And my family is what gave me hope to continue fighting. And then I started having all kinds of people like you guys surrounding us and giving us support. The GoFundMe that was done to help me get down to Arkansas for all of the very aggressive treatment protocols I went through. I did not know that there was this much love and compassion out there. And so you guys gave me strength and hope, knowing that there are people watching, knowing that there are people that care and that love us. And I know that there's people that are watching us as an example. Like, I've been through so many hard things in my life, and getting through those hard things often came from me looking to others as an example. When I was in the Marine Corps, I fractured my ankle on the Crucible. I looked back at like the Marines in the Frozen Chosen on their death march, the Cherokee Indians on the Trail of Tears, and so many other examples of like the Medal of Honor recipients of what they have done. And like, if they've done that, then I can do this, because they're just men. They're just people. And I'm a man. And if they can do it, then so can I. And so as I'm fighting with cancer, I also want to be that example for somebody else, because I know that if I can do it, then so can you, because we're just people, and there's nothing more special about me than there is about you. I just have had more practice doing hard things and having like suffering in life. And that practice has given me a different perspective and has given me the strength to say, no, I got this. I can do this too. So you guys give me hope and to be a good example for you guys and to honor the examples that were set for me. My buddy Derek, why are you so handsome? Bro, it's for you. And maybe you're blind. Could be. Get your eyes checked. All right, from ZR Manufacturing. How do you determine which side of the line to stay on between compassion and empathy when dealing with people in your life? Do you think having too much empathy towards someone can harm more than help? So I think what you're asking, you said between compassion and empathy. I think what you're asking is like between sympathy and empathy. This is my take on it. This is my understanding. And I'm just a dumb Marine, so I could be off. I could be wrong. Let me know what you think. My understanding is that empathy is having like a deep emotional tie to the situation you're in. And sympathy is allowing yourself to understand and kind of put yourself in the shoes of the other person, maybe without that deep emotional tie. For me, what ends up happening when I am too much in that empathy state is I tend to give people far more credit and slack than is appropriate. I give people way too many excuses. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt on things, perhaps more than is appropriate. An example would be, I have a friend that did ABC and maybe it hurt me, but I say, you know what? He's really going through a hard time right now. I'll give him some slack on that. But if I were in his shoes, would I have done the same thing? No, he was just being selfish. And I think when you look at people with sympathy versus too much empathy, you can see those lines a little bit more clearly. So yes, I do think that having too much empathy towards someone can do more harm than help, because what ends up happening is we don't hold people accountable. And part of being loving and part of good leadership is holding people accountable for their actions. Another one from Bison. What's the best moment of your life this far and why? Again, this is a really good question, and this is a hard one to answer. As I read this, a flurry of memories come to mind. First thing that comes to mind is holding my son when he was born, and then watching him learn how to ride a bike.
Good job, Caleb. Hey, you don't have to go fast. You don't have to go fast.
Watching him kind of like move into his own and start doing things like Spartan races with him. And what's up, my dude?
What's up?
What did we just do?
Spartan Stadium.
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 It's weird that they call it a stadium.
See?
It's in the stadium.
Stadium.
Stadium. You crushed it, man.
It was awesome.
You impressed me. Seriously.
Thanks. Yeah.
Just watching him develop. Another thing that runs into my mind is my wedding with Jess. Just a phenomenal memory.
Living in a world where so much is going on, it's hard to even hear myself think and hear my heartbeat. Now I know you're with me, and I know that I don't have to worry about what tomorrow holds. You got it on lock and you're so good when I can't see. You're so good at taking care of me. Sometimes I forget you made a way just when I thought it was over. I called out your name, and together we rise above it all. My heart is beating for you, slow and sweet. I know you're the reason for my melody.
But the things that are the most present in my mind right now are what's happened very recently. And very recently, Jess and I have begun a relationship with Jesus as of last year. And Tyler just did recently. And watching this family move toward God has been just an amazing amazing experience and maybe the best moment so far because I know what comes next. I know how the story ends now. I know that whether I live another 100 years or 2 days, I know we're all going to be at the end. And I don't think anything more important than our eternity and what happens to us forever. This world that we're in now is beautiful, it's wonderful, it's temporary, and there are great things that happen to us now, but I think the most important things that happen to us are what impacts our forever. And knowing that Jess's and Tyler's and my forever is in a better spot, I think that's the best moment of my life so far. All right, these next 3 questions are all kind of related. What keeps you going? How do you never quit? And was there a pivotal time in your life you realized you had this never quit ethos? Awesome questions. And I think they're all related. I'm going to answer them all at once. So it kind of started when I was in 7th to 8th grade when I started wrestling. And the absolute grind of the sport did something in me that I needed. Before this, there was a lot of suffering in life, and I knew I could endure hard things. But this is the first place I saw it kind of paying off, where your hard work, your grit had some actual tangible consequence that you could see, you could apply right now. Now, our wrestling team was not great. Our coach was gigantic, and we did not do well as a team, but it taught me a lot. That transitioned into my time in the military, and going into the Marine Corps, I went to boot camp 1 week after 9/11. I had signed up in January of 2001, open contract. The only 2 jobs that were available were active duty motor transport or reservist infantry. And I knew I didn't want to be reservist. I wanted to be active duty full time, but I also knew I didn't want to just be a truck driver. And I actually signed up to be in the band because I played the saxophone. I was like, well, I can probably do that pretty good. I totally choked on that audition, and I failed that outright. So I was open contract. So open contract means that you don't have a specific job assignment. You can go wherever the Marine Corps wants you. And so I go to boot camp 1 week after 9/11, and during the entirety of boot camp, I know that I'm going to war. That's what's in the back of my mind. And I know that I'm either going to be an asset or a liability. I'm either going to be someone that can be counted on, or I'm going to be someone that needs, people need to watch their background. And I thought I had what it takes, but I didn't have a whole lot of self-confidence at the time. I was definitely a mama's boy growing up, and I needed to kind of prove this to myself a bit. And during the Crucible, we were doing a night hike on the second night of the Crucible, where it's low light, like you're not allowed to use a flashlight. You're carrying 50 cal ammo cans full of sand or rocks or whatever's in them. And you're just marching in the dark, in single file line. You can't see where you're stepping. And my left foot steps into like a rut on the side of the trail. And for context, I went to boot camp in San Diego and Camp Pendleton. So I was a Hollywood Marine because of where I grew up and where I lived. And so we dealt with mountains. We didn't deal with sand fleas. So I rolled my ankle on the second night of the Crucible, and I pulled my foot out of that trench, and I stepped down again, and it rolls again. And the outside bone of my ankle fractures, the fibula, it fractured. So it wasn't the main supporting bone, the tibia, it was the outside bone. Still very uncomfortable. And so I break my ankle. The recruit behind me picks me up so I can keep marching. I can keep going. And I know this is it. I need to know if I can make it. I'm going to war. Am I going to be an asset or am I going to be a liability? Do I have what it takes to be a Marine? Because I'm not a Marine yet. I'm still a recruit. I still haven't proven it. I still haven't earned my Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. So this is my chance to earn it. And so I keep going, and I keep going. I keep going the rest of that night. My ankle ends up going numb. It was brutally painful. And then the next day is our ascent to the top of the Grim Reaper, the final pinnacle of the hike, if you will. And we start off that morning, and I remember we tear down our tents, these canvas shelter halves, and we start hiking. We start going. And for the first half hour, my ankle is just killing me. And eventually it goes numb. I don't know if it's from the swelling or nerve damage or what, but my foot just goes numb. Then every time we stop, so we would, every hour or so, we would stop and sip water. We would take our packs off every once in a while and sit on our packs. We would sit down, we would rest, and then I would start feeling my ankle throbbing again. I could feel it swelling inside my boot. And then like, all right, mount up. You get up and you throw your pack back on. And again, for the next half hour to an hour, my ankle's just killing me. It's terrible. And then eventually it goes numb. And there was a number of times when like it would go numb right as we're stopping for the next rest break. So I went through this kind of grit grind all day, the whole hike. And we get to this one rest spot. We sit down, we take our packs off, we sip water, and the drill instructor says, look around. Does this look familiar to you guys? And it's where we started that morning. We had just walked in a giant circle. They were trying to break our minds. They were trying to break us emotionally. And I had to tell myself, ain't nothing but a thing. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. Think about the Marines that were in the Frozen Chosen. Think about the Israelites going through the wilderness for 40 years. Think about the Medal of Honor recipients that we did these warrior studies on. This is just a hurt ankle. Now, I didn't know it was fractured at the time. I thought it was just rolled, but man, it hurt. So I got to keep going. And so then we get to the bottom of the Grim Reaper, and we have this big ascent that we have to go up.
For recruits training on the West Coast, the Crucible concludes with a 9.7-mile hike that begins before dawn. Culminating in a final, demanding climb up a 700-foot ascent known as the Reaper. Reaching the summit marks the completion of the Crucible.
We were broken down into platoons. The platoon I was in was Fox Company, Platoon 2014. And what you don't want to do is you don't want your platoon to mix with the platoon behind you or in front of you. You want to have platoon integrity. So you would put a couple people at the back of your platoon as what they called bulldozers. So that if someone was falling behind, you would literally push them so that they didn't fall back into the platoon behind you. Like if platoon 2014 mingled with 2015, we got problems. We didn't keep platoon integrity. So they assigned me to be a bulldozer. So they put me at the back of the platoon, and my job was, hey, when someone's struggling, when someone's hurting, you physically push them and you keep us together. That's your job. And so what ended up happening was I gave myself a mission. I gave myself something bigger than myself to think about. And this was my chance to say, do I have what it takes? Am I going to be an asset or a liability? And when you're able to put a bigger mission in your mind, when you're going through hard things, it helps you to keep going. It helps you to find something deeper than what you would do just for yourself. So it gave me a mission to think of that was bigger than myself. And it got my mind off of the pain of my ankle, and we made it to the top. And I think that was the moment that I earned and I learned that we can keep going far beyond what our mind wants to do, because there were so many times my mind wanted to quit. My mind was like, hey, it's easy. There's a bus back there. There's a safety vehicle. You can get back in there. You can stop anytime. I knew that if I stopped, I would be recycled. Because I had a feeling I was hurt pretty bad. And my mind kept telling me, hey, it's okay. You can stop now. My body was saying, hey, this hurts. You're dumb. You got to stop. But when I got my mind right, when I told it to stop complaining, when I told myself, hey, self, these men need you. The people around you need you. Are you going to quit on them? Because if I quit, that's what I'm doing. I'm quitting on them. I'm quitting on my family. I'm quitting on the people that depend on me. So when I changed that perspective, everything changed. And I think that growing up in the time post 9/11, being in the environments that I was in, around the people I was, this ethos of this never quit ethos was burned very deep into my psyche. And it's manifesting now as a stubbornness against this cancer and a never quit even now. In some places it's brave, and in some places it's stupid. And balancing that out is the trick now. All right, next question. Throughout your life, you've served in the military, been deployed overseas during a time of war. You're a firefighter and a police officer. All things have a level of uncertainty. Most recently in your life, when you got the cancer diagnosis, how did you and your family handle the uncertainty that came with that? And while seemingly impossible, did any of your previous life experience help in mitigating the effects of the unknown? Yes, absolutely. 100%, it all helped. I've had the luxury and the privilege of enduring some really hard things. And I say it that way because those experiences have given me the practice of understanding where my limits are and the practice of understanding how to face these hard things. In my job as a police officer, on every shift, you never really know what's right around the corner. You don't know if the traffic stop you're going up to is going to be a regular warning, a citation, or a gunfight. You have no idea. And so there's always a level of uncertainty in those things. I was a firefighter for almost 6 years, EMT, all that kind of stuff. And every single shift, it was all unknown. Are we going to go to a 4-alarm fire? Are we going to have an easy day? Or am I going to have to, I helped deliver a baby once. Like, you never know what's happening. And when you are immersed in that environment and have the practice of dealing with uncertainty, it gives you the ability to take a step back, like take a breath and say, okay, what's the next healthy step? How do we go from here? Through all of those things. And the guy that's asking me this, he's a cop as well. And we all know that there are situations that we face that you would rather not be in. And maybe those situations don't have a viable, good outcome, or you're going to likely be in the line of danger in this situation. What do? You do it anyway. And so you find that courage in you to say, all right, this is what we're doing. How do we do it? It's not, are we doing this? Like, no, this is what's happening. We are the first responder. We are that line between good and bad, and sometimes between life and death of somebody. So we don't have the luxury of saying, hey, I'm not going to this call. I'm not going to that situation. I'm not going to intervene in this domestic. I had a call once where there was a guy walking down the road with a flamethrower. I'm not going to say I'm not going to go to that. The whole way there, I'm like, what the hell do I do when I get there when the dude's walking down the road with a flamethrower? You don't know until you get there, and you kind of have to size it up when you get there. Same thing with this cancer, man. All we can do is say, all right, we're going through this. It's not an if, we are. What's the next healthy step? What do I do, and how do I manage this best? What's best for my family? What's best for the outcome, and how do we make the best of this? And that's part of where this podcast was born from, because I don't know if I'm going to be around for Tyler's wedding or to see, to hold grandkids. I feel like I am. And despite what the doctors say, I'm not their average patient. And right now, the stats are that people with my type of cancer and the degree of cancer I started this with, projected expectancy is 5 to 7, maybe 10 years. My answer to that is I'm not your normal patient. And you don't know my God. And cancer messed with the wrong person. But even so, I don't know. I don't know where things are going to be. I mean, I could walk outside and get hit by a truck. So tomorrow is never promised for any of us. So this podcast was started so that I could share lessons and experiences like this with my family. And that's really the purpose of it, is me looking at this situation, Jess looking at this situation, saying, okay, we're doing this together. how do we make the best of this? And how do we move forward with the next healthy step? So while this has been challenging for me, it's been just as challenging for Jess. We just got married. We've been married less than 10 years. And, she's trying to figure out how to manage this too. The love of her life is going through this and maybe gone at any time now. And what does she do? So it's just as hard for her. But we both take the same approach of, okay, this is the thing. We've had practice doing hard things. We're doing this. What's the next healthy step? All right. From Bison again. What did you want to be when you grew up as a kid? And what did your journey to Christ look like? So 2 questions. I'll split them in half. What did I want to be when I grew up as a kid? So I told you I was a musician. I started playing saxophone when I was like 9 years old. Honestly, I wanted to be a musician most of my life. And when I was in like 5th grade, 6th grade, I was like, hey, I'm going to go to Juilliard. I'm going to become a musician there. And as I grew up and I went through junior high and high school, some things in my life happened where I did not do great in school. Life at home was challenging, and that's not an excuse, but I tried to escape. And so I wrestled after school until like 5 p.m. every single day. And then I went to go to work, and then I would come home and do my homework late. And honestly, a lot of times I didn't do my homework. I would skip some classes sometimes. I did not do great in school. Despite being pretty intelligent, I didn't apply myself. So I destroyed my opportunities for scholarships for college. And I was not in a financial spot to be able to just pay for college or really even get loans for college. So I didn't think there's a whole lot of hope for me. And I lost hope in myself. And I didn't have a whole lot of self-esteem. So I knew I could play the saxophone moderately well, not a phenom, not amazing, but I thought that's what I could do. And then when I was in high school, I got into physics. Dallas Turner was my physics teacher, phenomenal guy. Mr. Brown, my chemistry teacher. Between physics, chemistry, mathematics, I thought maybe I could be a professor. I really enjoyed those subjects, but again, I couldn't do college. So when I joined the Marine Corps, I joined because I thought really the only thing I was good at and the only value I brought was as a musician. And so when I failed my band audition for the Marine Corps, it was pretty devastating to me. It's like, man, I'm not even good at this. And it turns out there was a bigger plan for me. What did my journey to Christ look like? This can be a very long story, and I did an episode on this a while ago about parts of this, and I'll kind of summarize it. Growing up, I grew up in a home that was Christian. My mom was a Christian, and there were some really challenging things happening in my life. I had a very troubled relationship with my dad. My stepdad was a monster, and I had a good father figure in my life. It was my gramps, but I saw him a couple times a year, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, depending on where we were living, because we moved around all the time. My understanding of Christianity was a little twisted. It was a little warped. And, there were so many spots in the Bible where it says like God the Father or, my Father in heaven. And my understanding of what a father was like was pretty ruthless. And some of the churches I went to were teaching fire and brimstone. And if you do anything wrong, there's consequence for your sin. And there was a little bit of like prosperity gospel in some areas where like if you do really good things, God will bless you. If you give more money to the church, God will give you more money back. Talking about how God will punish you for your sins here on earth, and if you walk away from God, He'll turn His back on you. And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. And I did not have a healthy understanding of what that meant. And so my perspective of God growing up was very legalistic. It was very fear-based, not healthy respect and awe and wonder, but true fear. There were times in my life when the speed limit's 35. I'll drive 33 or 34 because I was afraid of going over 35 and sinning and making God angry because of the consequence that would happen in my life of that. Because the consequence of sin is death. And these are all the things that were pounded into me. And that all made sense based on what I thought a father was. It all lined up. And so I tried being the best Christian that I could be, following all the rules and all the laws. And honestly, if I look back at it now, it looks a lot like what the Pharisees were like in the Old Testament and in the Gospels. They're just rule followers, but didn't really have an understanding of God. Long story short, all of this comes to a head during my divorce with my ex-wife, and I did not do everything right. I made some pretty big errors. The way that I had interactions with some of the people that were closest to me at that time, this Christian group of guys, in retrospect, I think they thought they were doing what was right, but it was very hypocritical, and it hurt me more than I can describe. I came out of this meeting with these guys after I was talking about what was going on with my ex, crushed. And I thought to myself, I've spent all of these years trying to do the right thing. I've been trying to do this Christian thing right. I've sacrificed so much. I have poured myself out in every way. And this is what it looks like. This is Christianity. And I said, if this is Christianity, I'm done. I'm out. In retrospect, they were just guys. They're humans being humans, trying to represent God, trying to represent Christianity. But I was judging Christianity based on the behavior of humans, which is, we're all flawed. So I walk away from the whole thing for almost a decade, for almost 10 years. I get diagnosed with cancer in 2024. And I had seen enough in my life to know that there's a God. I know there is, but I just was like, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe it's not Christianity. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, Nordic. Maybe it's, maybe I need to read the Gnostic Gospels. Maybe it's Hindu or Buddhism. Maybe it's something different. Maybe it's some other kind of spirituality. Because I know there's a God, but this other thing I had, that ain't right. That wasn't it. And so I remember it in the Bible. It says, if you seek, you shall find. And so I prayed for the first time in almost 10 years. I was like, all right, God, I know you're there. Help me see what's real. Show me the truth. And that was maybe in 2024. I think it was in 2024. And when I was down in Arkansas for some of my treatments, and my buddy Ryan Stevens down there, we go way back to like military police school. He was my roommate in MP school, and we became pretty good friends. And we ran into each other several times over and over and over again. And God has definitely got something going on with our friendship. This was in a time when literally someone would say, hey, I'm praying for you. In the back of my mind, the thought that goes to the back of my mind is like, that's wonderful. That's very kind. That and $2 will get me a cup of coffee. I just didn't believe it. I didn't believe there was anything to it. I knew there was a God, but I was like, this Christianity thing's, I don't know. Fool me once, not twice. So Ryan comes to my hospital room. He prays with me. He pours into my heart. He speaks in some life into me that I needed to hear. And we go to his jiu-jitsu gym, and these guys and gals come around us, and we're praying with Jess and me. And things just start changing. Things start softening in my heart a little bit. But I'm still very skeptical. But I can tell there's something happening inside. But I'm very resistant. I don't want to flirt with that thing that hurt me before. And so I'm very resistant. So the following year, 2025, Easter comes around. And Jess and I had been checking out different churches. Because again, I asked God, show me. I honestly wanted to figure out what was true, what was real. And Easter comes around, and Jess is like, hey, we should watch that movie, Passion of the Christ. It's like Easter and stuff. That's a thing we should do. And we watched it, and it wrecked us. It broke our hearts. A little bit later, Jess is like, you know what? I'm gonna watch this other show. I heard really good things about it. It's called The Chosen. It's like a show about Jesus and his ministry. And I literally told her, all of these shows are dumb. They're all super cheesy, but I'll watch it with you. And I'll answer questions because I have a knowledge of what the Bible says. 'Cause I spent so much time with it. I'll answer questions with you. I'll do this thing with you. But it's probably gonna be pretty dumb. And so we start watching The Chosen. All I had known before was this, ruthless stepdad in the sky. And I start seeing a representation of Jesus that's kind and loving. Now, one thing that people will say in general is if you want to make sure that you miscommunicate to somebody, make sure you communicate to them in a text or an email, because there's no inflection, there's no tone, there's no emotion, and people can read it however they want. If they're in a bad mood, they're going to read it and assume you're in a bad mood too. So as I had read the Bible growing up, I was reading it with this presupposition of this like stepdad in the sky. So I read everything through that lens. And so that it all made sense. When I saw a different thing in this show, it broke me down. Really began to make me question, maybe I had this whole thing wrong to begin with. Maybe I really don't know what I know. Maybe my assumptions are off. And if I'm going to honestly seek the truth, I need to even put those presuppositions aside. And I need to start fresh. And so we did. And we started leaning into, what does Christianity really mean? What does it really say? And who does Jesus really say he is? And between that and digging into the facts of Christianity, the facts of the strength of the scripture, such things like Wes Huff discuss, where he talks about the validity of the scripture, like the scroll of Isaiah found in the Dead Sea Scrolls is like 95% accurate to what our current Bibles say. And I had this assumption that things were being twisted and manipulated, that it was all done for population control, like kings trying to control their subjects through scripture. I believed the hype. So as I began to understand the truth of things, and then I also saw this other representation of Jesus, everything actually started to make a lot more sense to me. And so I'm still on this path. I don't think I have arrived. I am not a perfect theologian. I don't get everything right, but I'm on this journey, and it's pretty awesome. So that's what my journey to Christ looked like. Short story long. Observation, and one which I have the utmost respect. You can always be there for people even when things are difficult for you. Maybe a question. Is that taxing, energizing, or does that depend? Yeah, it depends. I feel like I'm not an extrovert. I don't like putting myself out there all the time. But the thing that does give me energy is when I see a lesson that I've learned help somebody else out, and I see the light bulb click or turn on, that gives me a ton of joy. It's part of what I love about teaching. Like I taught combatives and firearms and like self-defense and soft skills, and all of those things for a long time. And what I loved seeing was somebody who didn't believe in themselves. Suddenly the light turns on, and now they believe that maybe I can do this thing, or I can shoot. I can think about the world more differently and be a little safer. So when I share something I've been through and I see it help somebody, when I see that light bulb turn on, it does a couple things. It tells me that the hard thing that I went through that taught me that lesson wasn't suffered in vain, and that God is using me to help somebody else out. And they don't have to go through it themselves. They don't have to suffer directly. Now, some lessons have to be learned for yourself, but not all of them. When I try to help people in realms that I don't have a ton of experience, or if I am overextending myself, yeah, that's exhausting. Last question. What are you most excited for in the future? The first thing that comes to mind is holding grandkids. I believe I'll be around long enough to do that. I am excited to see where Tyler is going to go in his life with his adventure in rocket engineering. I have people in my life that I have strained relationships with that I hope to see healed, and I'm excited for that. I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of things I'm excited for. What I'm excited for is proving the doctors wrong. I think they don't know me. I think they don't know what I'm capable of, and they don't know what my God's capable of. And they've never had a patient like me before. And I'm excited to see those around me flourish. So that is my episode for this month's Ask Me Anything. If this is something that you guys like, go ahead and let me know. Like, do the subscribe thing. If you've been around this long, that's pretty awesome. Thank you. Thank you for watching all the way through. If there is something you want me to talk about, if you have a question for me, drop it in the comments below. And until next time, make today great.